Okay friends, today we're going to make artist self-portraits. So we're going to be drawing ourselves. I'm working from a learning guide you have at your table. I'm starting with a U and then I'm making ears. I'm making my neck and shoulders that go down and a line for where my shirt is meeting my neck. Now I'm going to make the outline of the top of my hair. If you flip your learning guide over, there are a lot of different hairstyle choices. So check both sides of your learning guide before you make your hair. Don't fill your hair in, even if your hair is black. Now I'm going to pick details that I like. I'm going to pick an eyes, nose, and mouth from one of the people here. I think I want to be winking. So I'm going to make my eye, and then my other eye, eyebrows, nose, and my mouth. Now I'm ready for paint. Oop, forgot a last step. Details, how could I forget that? A bow, and maybe some stripes on my shirt. Now I'm ready for paint. When I'm making a self-portrait, I want to think about what I actually look like. Your paper color is kind of like your skin color, but you're going to probably want to add paint to make it just right. My hair is brown, so I'm starting with brown paint for my hair. If your hair is black, I have black paint in a separate cup, and I will get it for you. Don't worry that it's not in your palette. That's normal, and that's okay. If your skin is peach, you're going to use the peach directly from the paint set to put a light layer of skin color over the paper. If your skin is tan, meaning brownish peach, you start with a thin layer of peach and then layer brown paint on top. If you're unsure about this, just ask me. I'm happy to help you. Then I'm going to add other colors, maybe the color of my bow, and then some stripes on my shirt. And now I'm going to let this dry. I'll start on my background next. Oop, teeth. Then my background. I'm going to do an oil pastel resist for my background. I'm going to make swirls. So I'm starting with almost like a circle, but instead of closing it, I'm getting smaller, smaller, and smaller. You ought to be getting pretty good at this kind of shape. It seems like we've been using it a lot lately. You can switch colors whenever you like and use as many colors of swirl as you want to. For the next step, we're going to be using watercolor paint, and we're going to layer it on top of the oil pastel. Remember, oil pastel and watercolor don't mix, so you can paint right over your oil pastel and the paint will move off it. Also remember that your paintbrush is like a ballerina. It always dances on its tiptoes, never ever scooting around on its bottom because nobody wants to go to the booty scooting ballet. So up on your tiptoes, never ever scrubbing or scraping your paper. If your paintbrush starts to run out of paint, that means it's thirsty. Get water first, then dip into the paint. Adding more water makes your color lighter. Adding less color makes your color, or less water makes your color darker. Only paint an area one time. So if there's already color on a spot, I'm not going to paint it again. If you do this, your paper could rip, and you definitely don't want that to happen. So looking for a white spot, and then filling it, my brush on its tippity toes. And you can see here that my color looks a little bit darker. That's because there was less water in that paint. There was still enough water that my paint can go on very smoothly, but by adding just a teeny less water, my paint gets brighter. You never want your paintbrush to feel scratchy. If that's happening, that's your paintbrush telling you that it's thirsty and it needs more water. Last few areas. Now I'm ready to move on. In the last step, I'm going to combine some statements that I've made about myself with the painting I started last class. So I'm going to cut out that self-portrait I made. Being careful not to cut any parts of me off. That would be awful, terrible, very tragic. And my shoulder. When I glue this down, I want to glue it to the bottom of my paper. I don't want it to look like I'm floating in the air and I got cut in half. I want it to look like I'm just kind of popping up on the paper. So I'm going to flip it over and trace around the outside edges with glue. Then I'm going to flip it over and stick it. Now I have a page of statements I made. I did a little interview with you, and I've printed those out for you. You're going to start by cutting your statements. So I'm just cutting them into strips. I'll trim later to take off all that extra paper at the end, but for now I'm just cutting it into strips. Now I can cut off the end if it's longer. And I'm just going to place these around myself. So one says my name. I'm going to put some glue on the back and stick it wherever it is I want it to go. Then I'm picking a new statement up. If there's a lot of white at the end of the statement, like empty paper, I'm going to trim it off. So you can see here there was a lot of white there. So I'm just taking that off, getting rid of it, and gluing the statement itself. Dab of glue and stick. I want to make sure that my words are right side up, not upside down. And I also want to make sure that they're not covering each other. You don't want to lose some of your statements by overlapping with others. The last step in this project is adding a little bit of paint splattering to make it look like I was actually creating art. Oop, and you can see I made a little mistake. So instead of panicking, I just am going to put the end of that word on and stick it, and phew, crisis averted, problem solved. Flip my paper over and give them a back rub. Okay, and now to make me look like I'm an artist at work. I'm going to use this pastel and I'm just going to make a couple lines of paint, sort of like on the cover of the book Swatch. I don't want to add too much. I want it just to look like maybe I was painting and some paint flew up at me. Now I get to do a wee tiny bit of splatter painting. I'm loading up my brush and just splattering around. I don't want so much that I lose myself. I still want that to be the focus, but it just adds a little extra color. So have fun and make some beautiful art because you are real artists.